Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Welcome to the Landing Strip with Nik Lynham and Mikey Garcia, presented by From Financial.
Welcome back to the Landing Strip as the West Coast trip from hell comes to an end as the Winnipeg Jets beat the Calgary Flames 4-3 in a shootout. A bit of a step forward, though, comes against the worst team in the league. Another third period blown lead. This show can go a lot of different ways, I think, depending on how you want to see this team right now. You're going to take some different things out of this one tonight. On one hand, the Winnipeg Jets scored 6 goals tonight. On the other hand, 2 of them came against themselves. Okay, we're going to discuss a lot of interesting stuff in this Winnipeg Jets versus Calgary Flames game on this Saturday night to end this West Coast trip. Mikey, how are you doing this evening, buddy?
Man, that was not a game that you want to be watching late at night after not getting a whole lot of sleep over the course of the week. Oh my God, I'm so happy this road trip is coming to an end, not just because of the late starts, but because of just how poorly we've had to see the Jets hockey on display in so many of these games. Before we get into the actual Jets play and all those type of things, yeah, I really think hockey needs to start treating own goals the same way that soccer does. I don't want to see any more of this, the last player to touch the puck on the other team gets credit for the goal. No. If you're the idiot standing there and you put the puck in off of you, you should have to wear that on the box score. It should be up there with your name with the own goal symbol next to it to show everybody that you couldn't get the fuck out of the way and let the goalie make a save. So that's going to be my new campaign that I'm going to be championing here. So if everybody wants to get on board with that, we'll get that rule changed. The game tonight was not the masterclass that you'd want to see out of the President's Trophy team, the President's Choice team this year. They won. Yeah, they got 2 points. Yeah, they scored 6 goals. But they did it against the worst team that I've been able to watch in quite a long time. I've called the Saddle Dome a shithole before, and it looked like they were skating through actual shit tonight on both sides of it. We've given the Jets a lot of credit, a lot of goodwill, a lot of benefit of the doubt, the way that they've played last year. But this is one of those games where I don't feel like they get the benefit of the doubt in it for me, even though they got the 2 points. To see them not put up any type of actual effort, be asleep through most of the game was real tough against a Calgary team that just sucks.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and that's one of those rules. Hey, Cole Perfetti would have had a 2-goal night tonight if we were going that way. Logan Stanley would have added another goal if we were going on those rules. Definitely an interesting one because I do think, and again, this isn't, I don't necessarily think a big compliment. I do think through the majority of this game, the Winnipeg Jets had the better quality of chances, though you weren't getting much either way. I do think you saw some quality looks from the Jets throughout their lineup today. Obviously, the fourth line gets on the board with a really strong answer shift, though the fourth line and the Stan and Shen pair giveth, and they also taketh away, giving one back the other way just later in that same period. I did think this was a game where you saw the Jets forward groups get more chances throughout the lineup than they normally have. I thought this was a better night from Jonathan Toews' line, and Toews specifically. At some point, one of those wraparound looks to Perfetti is going to have to go in. Wolf also comes up big on that save from Nemestikov to Toews. I thought the Lowry line had a slower start to this game than what we've seen the last few, and I thought as they settled in, they started to control the flow of their minutes a little bit. I thought this was a slow start from the top line, especially Gabe Vilardi looked a bit lost to me throughout this night, and there's some comments about needing more from him and Vilardi, or him and Perfetti, and I'd like to discuss that topic a little bit today. But I thought they had the better looks in their opportunities as the game went on. The power play gets on the board. And then all on the reverse of it, we see at times a mess defensively again, turning full control possessions into Calgary Flame opportunities, taking shifts where there's a shift early in the game where the first line finally had controlled, sustained offensive looks, and then a Shen bobble creates opportunities for the Flames the other way. They blow another third period lead, which has become a bit of a trend and not something that last year's version would have done.
Yep.
And then they go to a shootout with the lowly Calgary Flames, who are trying to fight rebuild talk right now. It's an interesting one because I think there's some good to take, and some of that good is on the bar of where the rest of this road trip's been. And I think that's important to say. Wasn't perfect. They end the trip with a win, but it also had its ugly moments too. What is your biggest takeaway leaving the Calgary Flames versus Winnipeg Jets game? Where is it starting here?
It's the sleepy starts to talk about where is it starting. We can't be starting every single game being outshot 2-1 and taking, 10, 15 minutes before the team realizes that they're in a hockey game that they're not just watching. You can't keep doing that. You can't keep putting yourself behind the 8 ball in these difficult positions that you got to keep clawing yourself out of. And then kind of in a weird bow on it, coming up to the third period and then blowing a third period lead. It's been a really weird run of results, but more concerning for me has just been the sleepy starts over and over and over again. You can excuse it the first time at the beginning of a road trip in a different time zone, whatever, but we've been doing this now for, a full week all the way through, and no one's been able to adjust whatsoever. That's a tough one for me to swallow. So, the sleepy starts really need to get cleaned up here. They need to be ready to go from puck drop.
Over on Twitch, as usual, Choices leaves us a banger to start off the show. So let's go discuss that before diving into a very active chat on YouTube tonight with a lot of thoughts to get to. This game that is one of those games you can go take so many different directions. Choices TK says a much needed win to stop the bleeding. Jets failed to hold on to another lead in the third period is becoming a pattern. Unfortunately, this is a bad Flames team, and there wasn't much separation between those two teams. And I do think that is important to really comprehend.
Yep.
Not sure how Arneal thinks he can get away with rolling Shen and Stanley out there, especially in a road game. Just seems like negligence. Interesting topic to talk about, given how they handled those two in the third period as well. Road trip wasted. A lot of good fortune team found early. And a failed opportunity to build a cushion only gets harder from here. Team better find something in the next few days as they have Carolina, Columbus, Mini, and the Caps on deck, a step up in competition. Will they be up to the task? And, a lot of truth in there to what I kind of watched today. Where is this kind of going into Columbus? Is it going to just be some home cooking?
Yeah, this feels like in times past, the Jets would have this game coming up on Tuesday, back at home after the, shaky road trip, a little bit easier of, perceived opponent, and they would go out and they'd roll them, right? You'd expect them to go out there, have a classic, the first line's going to go out and have 2 points apiece. Everyone's going to get a goal. Power play is going to knock one in, and, everything will be hunky-dory again, and people will think we're crazy for bringing this up. But I don't think that's going to really wipe away all of the actual problems, especially if it goes out and, like I said, one of those just real classic, the top line carries everything through, and we pretend like there's no issues beyond there.
Gilbert Marion over on YouTube says, he started his chat with, this team is really difficult to watch. Shen is unplayable, and we need a lot more from Velarde and Perfetti. I thought Taves was really good, and Lowry's line as well. DeMello is a liability. And there's a few different topics in there. Let's start with the Velarde and the Perfetti topic. I think that's a good place to start. We're going to dive into some of this. But a lot of what the Jets needed to take another step, and again, it could happen over the course of this year, but especially with Nick Ehlers walking out the door, especially with bringing back an older crowd, they needed another step forward from Gabe Velarde and Cole Perfetti. This was Perfetti's, third game of the season.
Yep.
I don't think we've seen that quite yet from both players. And given the way this roster is built and the lack of offense, that is where it really has to come from. What are you seeing from those two early? And has it been enough?
So this will be tough to say on a night where I think this is probably, from a line perspective, their best game, right? The three of them, they really did well during their 5-on-5 minutes tonight. So I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle, that this absolutely was one of the better showings just from a controlling the play standpoint. Perfetti, I'm not worried about yet. He took a little bit of time last year to get going, not in terms of the play, but just in terms of the points actually accumulating. You know, we talked about it right before the big breakout happened with him last year, that he gets himself into the right positions. He's putting himself in the right opportunities to get those, the goals and the assists, and they're going to come. I feel the same way right now. He's, putting himself into the right spot. I'm not worried that the production isn't going to be there for Cole Perfetti. Taves has not had the start I think we're being sold that he's had. Especially in, if people are suggesting things like he should be considered for the Olympics, or during the broadcast tonight when they said, "Wow, Taves has been an incredible ad for the Jets. What a revelation." He hasn't been. It just hasn't worked out that way. The stats don't back it up. The eye test outside of tonight hasn't backed that up. We haven't been that many games into the season, and I've already been kicking the idea around of, hey, maybe he needs to slide over to the wing, and they still need to find a center for that line. Tonight was a lot better. Again, not going to take that away. If they can continue to put up consistent results like this in terms of controlling the play, outshooting their opponents, I'd be comfortable with it. But one game does not a season make, and I'm still not out of the woods yet with where Taves is. But Perfetti, I'm not worried about yet.
For me, I'm kind of where Gilbert Marion is here, where he says Velarde is invisible. I know he got the game winner, but invisible. Perfetti the same. These are guys we need to be honestly impact players, and they haven't been. Velarde finishes in overtime, but I thought this game showed him off in the D zone, kind of wandering in his own place. I didn't find him to be much help on that line. A lot of it came through Scheifele and Connor when it did come. Though it was another night they were outshot, though it seemed like they had the better quality of chances. So I'll take that and run when it comes to that line. And Cole Perfetti, at some point, we need him to take a very real step, and it can't just be a guy. We're tweening on the idea of whether he's an impact player or not. The Winnipeg Jets, full stop, needs him to be what he was drafted to be, and that just hasn't been there at this stage. And for this to work, it really does fall on those two taking a big step, given the lack of youth coming in behind it. So I did want to talk about that today, because I did think that's something that's been lacking from those two, and those two are a big piece to what's going on here. They have to be impacting games at a much higher clip than we've seen early on.
Totally agree. And on the Taves thing, shout out to Connor Hrabchuk, who tweeted this out before the game today, so this is not including tonight's performance, but coming into the game today, 356 players in the NHL have played 200 minutes 5-on-5. Out of that group, Jonathan Taves is second last in 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage. And he's been outscored 11-6 at 5-on-5, making his goal share 328th. So he's been not good, just in general, at that position so far to start out. Hopefully tonight is a sign of better things to come, but yeah, the impact just hasn't been there for Taves.
As we move throughout, so we saw this was game number 2. Dylan Sandberg's back. We figured Luke Schenn would be coming back into the lineup. He ends up with Logan Stanley, and I see Doug Henderson had pointed out that we saw a bit of a blue line blender in effect in the third period. So we see Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello, and I think we got to have a bit of a DeMello conversation, as the chat's pointed out as well. We see Dylan Sandberg and Neil Pionk, and then we see Luke Schenn and Logan Stanley. And in the third period, Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn aren't trusted enough to play on their own, and we see Stanley taking shifts with Neil Pionk and Dylan DeMello, and we see Schenn taking shifts with Luke Schenn, or Schenn taking shifts with Stamberg and Morrissey. Luke Schenn came into this game with quite the stack going against him. 5-on-5, 17 goals against since his last goal for that he's been on the ice for. Breaks that streak today with a primary assist, getting that shot through that gets buried. And then later in that same game, ends up coughing it up and leading to a goal against that banks off Stanley net front. What did we think of what we saw from the D? And let's include Dylan DeMello in that, but the third pair as well, because of them, we see a bit of a rotation in the third. Would you take of that rotation? And where is this kind of going here?
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to keep trying out this pairing that we keep seeing doesn't work. And then it causes you to have to break up your other pairings come the third period. It's real strange to be having to shorten your bench in game 18, not game 18 of the playoffs where you're shortening the bench to keep your top four. No, like just game 18, and you're already like, yeah, no, we can't trust this third pairing playing together, and yet we're going to keep putting these two guys together again. It's real strange. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of just hockey. It's frustrating to watch because it's putting a strain on the other two pairings. Not only are the other ones having to play their extra minutes, they're taking tougher competition as well as then having to clean up for those other guys. And then you've got them having to play with different pairings in that third period. Like, it just, the downstream effect of it is all bad. It's just not good to have that much chaos back there. You want some consistency on your back end, and the Jets can't seem to have it while they're figuring out whether or not Luke Schenn is going to be able to skate today.
Yeah, it's never a good sign. And I guess this is what's frustrating, because even on the year, if you look at the ice time breakdown, normally in the third period, they stop playing Luke Schenn pretty much.
Yep.
So clearly they know they can't trust him down the stretch in hockey games, yet they still keep wasting a roster spot and keep going to this direction. And hey, Colin Miller hasn't had a great start himself either. Try the fucking kid at this point, because honestly, you can't keep doing this to yourself. And the fact, against the Calgary Flames, one of the other teams in the league that struggles to create offense and doesn't have the type of firepower that scares you, you have to shelter both of the guys when 90% of people that watch this team and don't have a hard-on for those two because of their size, never mind what they actually do on the ice, would have told you that this is the type of situation, especially on the road, that you're going to find yourself in. And it's just, at what point does this change? Like, the answer is not, neither one of those two, especially as a pair, are going to be something you're ever going to trust. And you can't keep throwing away minutes like this. Like, we're just all wasting each other's time watching this. And this was what they dreamed up back to last year's deadline. And this can't be it.
No, it can't be. The funny kind of ironic thing is that I talked about it last year. I thought they maybe were perceiving Luke Schenn was going to be the Logan Stanley whisperer. He's going to be the mentor. He's going to bring, Stan along and teach him how to be this big hulking defenseman that's going to patrol the line for the Jets. The funny and ironic thing is, I actually think Colin Miller is probably a better mentor for Logan Stanley, who does his best work blue line in. Teach him how to get pucks through. Teach him how to walk the blue line a little bit. Teach him that side of the game that he actually has a little bit of instinct and a little bit of talent in, as opposed to trying to make him into something he's not. But they keep sending him out there with Luke Schenn when really you probably would get more out of him learning from a Colin Miller who's like, hey, this is a guy who isn't going to be playing in your top four, knows how to work with limited minutes and can be kind of successful at it, as we saw last year. Now, this year hasn't had the same results, but again, asking a guy to come in cold constantly and just, like that, snap a finger and be productive is not realistic. So if you would give Miller some time, we know that he can be a really productive member on that third pairing, and you might actually get to teach Stanley something that'll, keep him around the NHL. It's just, it's a little funny and ironic that this is the route that we seem to be stuck on.
Okay, I like where the chat's going, because they go a couple places I was looking and sitting here for. Al Camino says, Nick, how many times do I have to tell you, you just can't give up on a guy you traded up for in the draft 10 years ago? Gilbert Marion points out, actually, Stanley was pretty solid, in my opinion. Schenn is terrible. And I think you touched on it. Like, offensive blue line in, Stanley's really become fine. It's just everything else. And when Luke Schenn can't do anything at this stage, Especially for a team that's having trouble creating offense. You can't have a guy like Luke Shen, the puck dying on his stick, when your top line finally gets an ozone possession. The other problem is with pairing those two together. The one thing the coaching staff seems to love to do, and it works today on the answer shift where that line scores, but then they give one up later. He loves to put them out there with the fourth line, and I'm not sure there's many five-man collections of NHL talent that are much worse than Stanley, Shen, Pearson, Ford, and Nyquist all being out there together. I don't love that situation. But Caitlin and T. Will go somewhere that I wanted to kind of take this. Caitlin says, Arniel clearly doesn't trust Shen. I don't like conspiracies, but I think a reason other than he's being told to play him. I can't think of a reason other than he's being told to play him by management. And T. Will says, at this point, I'm convinced that Chevy is working on a Braden Shen trade. That's the only explanation that Luke is still in the lineup. And I find something very interesting here. On 32 Thoughts at the end of the week here, Friedman talked about how the Leafs wanted to make a push for Braden Shen, but he's not convinced Braden Shen would have said yes there unless his brother was there.
Oh no.
Are we being long conned into watching 60+ games of Luke Shen so that they can go get his brother for the next 3 years to be a part of this sinking ship as we go backwards?
Look, we didn't end up with Chris Tanev. It's not going to work. It's not going to work, and I kind of don't want it to work. Braden Shen is not the answer. That's not what we need. More of the same. And no, God, please no.
Let's talk about DeMello a little bit, because I do think that pair has struggled a bit on this road trip, and I'm not sure that's necessarily Josh Morrissey, though both of them get caught a little too high on that 6-on-4, and Klapka and Coronado are all by themselves net front to tie this hockey game. Are we concerned about Dylan DeMello?
I guess for me, the concern with DeMello is kind of relative at this point. We've seen a couple seasons now that he doesn't have quite the fastball every game that we're used to seeing him with. Can he be okay and effective on Morrissey's side there? Yeah, he definitely can on most nights. He's all right. But we're going to see more and more games like this where it's very evident the struggles that he's having. The issue for me is that there's really nowhere to go with it. There's nobody else to put on that spot with him that doesn't kind of, we've seen them try the Morrissey Pionk thing when they're chasing some offense and want a goal, but it's really not a lot of fun to watch defensively, and I don't think Morrissey likes that level of chaos. And at that point, you're just kind of nerfing your best asset, your best weapon on the back end by strapping the weight of Neil Pionk. So, unfortunately, we're going to kind of have to keep eating Dylan DeMello's tougher nights until they can find somebody that's going to come in and take that spot from him, because they've got a real lack of options, I think.
On that topic, B. Kells, good to see you over on the Twitch chat, said, Braden Shen, my dad screams at him every night as a Blues fan. And Dylan DeMello has been terribly mid this season. Over on YouTube, Julian says JMO needs a real D partner to play with. He is constantly having to carry that pairing, and he's not getting any younger. And Caitlin says, I don't think he's a bad player, but he can't handle 20-plus minutes every night anymore. Julian points out they need to bring up Salo to partner with JMO, and he can learn from him. It's an interesting dilemma. I think if you look at the Jets D-core, finding Josh Morrissey a partner has to be the priority, and then by doing so, you also turn Dylan DeMello into your third right-handed D, bumping out Luke Shen. Where that's going to come from, that's a good question. I mean, before a trade is made, at this point, I would like to see Elias Salmonson playing those third-pairing minutes and seeing if he could work his way into the NHL. But I did want to bring up, because this was a night where they played against them, in Murata Tesh's latest was a bit of a mailbag, and there was a trade proposal I wanted to ask you about, Mikey, and I want to get the chat's input on. To fix the Josh Morrissey partner problem and fix the D-core, Mackenzie Weegar to Winnipeg for Brad Lambert, Elias Salmonson, and a second-round pick. Mikey, would you be in on that deal if you're in the chat right now? Would you be in on that deal? Let's talk about it, because I do think if you want to fix this decor and get it up to snuff, this is the kind of direction you're going to have to go to do so.
One more time with the return. It was Lambo, Salmonson, a second.
And a second-round pick. Yep.
For 31-year-old Mackenzie Weegar, 5 more years on the contract, 6.25.
Yes, sir.
Ooh. Can we make it Heinola and a first instead of?
No. That's the trade. You got to make this
that's
is the
one,
trade.
It's
going to cost value.
That's the one on the
value.
table. A first round pick
doesn't have any value.
A first round pick has value.
Not compared to that.
Oh God. No. All right. In a vacuum, no. In a vacuum, I don't make the trade.
Mikey.
Hold on. However, with this Jets team, I make the deal. They need to fix that spot now. They don't have time to wait for the future. They don't have time to see if Salmonson is going to be able to work into that spot. I think if that's the one on the table, Lambert's a non-issue at this point. He's not going to be the impact player in the next year or two. You can part with that. Second round pick is fine. You can park with that. Salmonson's the one that hurts. But again, if you are going all in with this group, it kind of feels like they should be, right? We talked about it last year. They needed to do it. Yeah, I think the Jets kind of have to do that one if it's on the table.
Looking into the chat, B. Cal says we really need to make that trade. I think I make that deal. Choices TK says got to do it. Uyghur is what you hope Salo does for you one day.
Yep.
Over on YouTube, you get a bit of a mix. Caitlin points out I like Salmonson, but expecting a 21-year-old second-round pick to come in and play top pair minutes is unreasonable. You need to start on the third pair. Gilbert says
Disagree.
yes. Adam Douglas says no. Turd Ferguson says do it all day. Gilbert says Lambert isn't going to be much. Turd points out you're playing to win now. Al Camino says you still need another center and winger. Start the rebuild. Caitlin says yes. Management says we're completely in to win now, and Uyghur helps us win now. DL14 says yes. Eric says also want Klapka. And if Mackenzie Uyghur was willing to waive, and that was the cost, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. Elias Salmonson's their top prospect, but he's far from a sure thing.
Yep.
Mackenzie Uyghur gives them 3 top pairing level defensemen signed at a combined $17.5 million for the rest of Josh Morrissey's prime. If you want to talk about building a decor that's capable of taking you somewhere, having 3 guys that are capable of playing first pairing minutes, especially with Uyghur being able to play both sides. So you want to talk
That
about
is the nice
having
part.
coverage if one guy goes down.
Yep.
And it pushes DeMello down to the third pair and Shen right out of the lineup. So not only do you get the big upgrade at the top, who can impact this game at both sides of the rink, has a bit of bite to him, is on a great contract with where the cap's gone, you actually give yourself the type of decor in front of Connor Hellebuck that gives the heartbeat of your team the back end where your best real assets are. It gives them a real chance. I do think Al Camino is completely correct that you still need another center and winger, and finding that's going to be a bit more difficult. But this trade does also keep a first-round pick in the holster to move for one of those assets. It still gives you some ammo to go get one of those. You're going to live and die by this core. I think a guy like Mackenzie Uyghur definitely is the type of piece that I don't worry about losing those trade pieces at all to acquire.
Yeah, totally agree. There's certain players that it moves the needle so much that it's worth it, right?
Yes, and I view him in that lens.
Yep.
I
Adam
think
Douglas
he should be a fringe Team Canada Olympian defenseman, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. Adam Douglas is saying if we said Uyghur has 5 years left, yes, he's got 5 years left. This is year 3 of his 8-year deal, and he signed at 6.25.
That is definitely the type of ad on the back end that I think changes the perspective of how we look at Winnipeg's decor. And that's a guy I think that would play up in Winnipeg's system. And it would also help a guy like Josh Morrissey that much more, getting a guy like that beside him. So if that was an option, I enjoyed reading that one in Murat's latest. Go
Yep.
give him a read. He is worth your subscription over at The Athletic, because I thought he had some humbling takeaways as well in there about the Jets today. And I wanted to bring that up because they played Calgary today. But we're approaching the halfway point. Let's get to the From Financial Faceoff.
All right, let's hit it. Right on.
Right on. So on this evening, Calgary versus Winnipeg, what was your From Financial Faceoff? What do you think was the difference in this hockey game? What led to its result? We want to hear from you in the chat, or if you want to call in and talk some hockey tonight, the phone lines will be open after me and Mikey finish up our thoughts on the From Financial Faceoff. Mikey, let's start with you, buddy. What's your From Financial Faceoff on this night?
Touched on it at the beginning of the show. It's once again sleepy starts. The Jets putting themselves in such a bad place right off the hop. They're getting outshot almost 2-1 to start these games off. They're not moving. They're not skating. It is absolutely painful to watch the beginning of these games, and it's been pretty much every single game during the road trip. So it's become enough of a trend that I think it's starting to, it didn't cost them the W tonight. They were able to get it, but I still feel like tonight was a loss in my brain. Every time I go back and reflect on the game, it feels like they lost. So I'm sticking with that one. It's the bad starts, the sleepy starts.
Yeah, on this night, I'm gonna go with half-heartedly the fact that they put 6 pucks into a net, though two went against them. For a team that's offensively challenged, they found their way to goals on this night at both ends of the rink. So my From Financial Faceoff is the Jets finding their way to putting pucks in the back of the net on this night, even when it wasn't necessarily the best thing for them.
That is some glass half full shit, and I love it.
Hey, we've been looking for goals. We got a lot of them. A lot of them off Jets, sticks, and bodies.
That's right.
In this one.
All right, phone lines are now open, everybody. 1-204-800-0409. Get on the line. Give us a call.
Terry Ferguson says, Saturday night, we need a call-in. Julian says, if Salo goes to Calgary, he will definitely play. And Uyghur gives us actual toughness on the blue line that's been missing since Buff. Caitlin says it's an absolute no-brainer. JD points out you need bodies now.
Yep.
Gerbo points out, let's talk about this. Because I've seen a couple takeaways that go along the lines of this in some of my DMs and group chats as this game went on. So one of the comments I'd seen in one chat was, this team at times looks like the end of the Maurice days. Gilbert says, seems that there's a structure that is not being played out there as the coach wants, other than the Lowry line. Does this team look disorganized in that regard?
I'm not seeing it quite that way yet. To me, it still looks like they know what the structure is and they're attempting to execute what the plan is, but they're just not able to. They're a bit behind. They're a step slower. They're making boneheaded mistakes and brain farts. But to me, it doesn't feel unorganized. It doesn't feel rebelling against the system that they don't think is working. That type of thing. To me, it feels like they're attempting to, but just not able to execute for whatever reason.
I tend to agree with you. I do think the roster isn't necessarily up to snuff with what they want to do. I will say with the top line, and they score a great goal today where Morrissey stretches it up to Connor off a turnover he created, and Connor stretches cross ice to a streaking Mark Scheifele who buries. So they get on the board there at 5-on-5. But I think that line at times has fit that description a little bit. When you watch them defensively, like we know they're so good off the rush. If that's the type of line where you give them an inch and they're going to kind of take a mile offensively. But I think that we've seen that group specifically lack details in the system defensively and go back to the version that cheats for offense. And for this team to be successful, especially given their offensive struggles, and this is a group so far this year at 5-on-5 is accountable for half the Jets' goals for.
Yep.
But given how the Jets are built, we really need that group to be bought in defensively, and I do think them as a whole do stray away from it a little bit.
Yep, 100% agree.
Turd Ferguson says they just don't have enough speed pushing back, and I do think that is a part of it. Caitlin says, I will say the first line does look like that at times. Honestly, the second or fourth lines are trying to do their best, but they just can't do it. And as I kind of just talked about, I see this very similar to how Caitlin is. I do think it's more of a pace issue with those other groups in that they're trying to play within that structure and they're having trouble keeping up at this point.
But the skill level just isn't there compared to what it was last year. The speed isn't there compared to what it was last year, and that's two things that that focuses on, right? So.
Yeah, a couple from Financial Faceoffs sneak in here. Choice of TK had from Financial Faceoff with Calgary being so bad, only reason the Jets managed to get 2 points. And over on YouTube, Eric says the From Financial Faceoff is the longest road trip of the year against fast teams. If 2 to 3 games from now we're still looking sleepy, we're definitely in trouble.
Yep.
Also points out, and this is a great call too on the idea of rebelling against the system. This is something I wanted to talk about. Eric says, evident by Scheifele whining at the end of the game. Let's go to the Scheifele play. Big moment. Morrissey, Scheifele, Connor get out there for their second shift in overtime. I want to talk about who they threw out second in overtime too. Are we for real here? But Morrissey, Scheifele, and Connor get out there for their second shift. Connor sees Scheifele streaking to the net. Uyghur makes a play on him. They turn it up over the other way. Uyghur looks like he has a step on Scheifele. Scheifele gets called for holding. And this game goes to a shootout, and Mark Scheifele continues for what felt the entire scrape down the middle, giving it to the refs until they gave him a misconduct and tossed him. What did you think of the entire Mark Scheifele sequence? Let's talk about that moment and maybe a bit of reminiscent on his night entirely tonight.
Yeah, we know that when things aren't going well, Mark Scheifele gets a little bit prickly out there. He's shown to show some emotion coming through like that. So I'm not surprised that Turd Ferguson puts it real well. The top line is cheating for offense because the Jets have no other offense, not even any danger that forces the teams to play in their own end. So yeah, I think it was a long night for that line. It's been a long night for Scheifele, and some of that bubbled over and through. So. I don't know. Shit happens. It sucks that he wasn't able to participate in the shootout, but at least the Jets still are able to put it away with Velarde. But yeah, no, please let's talk about that. Let's talk about that other grouping there.
Hold on a minute. I will say this on that line. I thought this was a game where Kyle Connor was really trying to will that group to something, and it just didn't come for the rest of them. I did think this was a tough night for Mark Scheifele, a real tough road trip for the Mark Scheifele Olympic hopes. He gets the goal in this one, but I did feel like he was genuinely lost and frustrated a lot of this night.
Yep.
You had seen the intermission panel kind of talking about how right before he scored, they were wondering if he was playing. The broadcasters covering the game mentioned how quiet he was in the first. What I take away from that end of the game was he let out his frustrations in the most selfish of manners. Like, the penalty doesn't even cost him. He has all that time to settle down, and he's going to be a part of the shootout.
Yep.
And he keeps going and going and going and takes the misconduct for what? What are you proving at that point? You have a chance for the extra point in which you're one of the key members of this team trying to score goals.
Yep.
And you just completely take yourself out of it for no fucking reason. And honestly, him whining about that whole play, I think the refs got it right.
Yeah, that's the tough part about it is I agree with the refs on that one.
I didn't see Uyghur do enough to take a call on it.
Yep.
And because he's got a step on him and it's going to be a scoring chance the other way, they've got to call that holding. Like, I see Mark Scheifele in the wrong on the ice and then running his mouth is just a selfish decision by a guy that's supposed to be leading this team and taking steps forward. that whole situation just pissed me off. And hey, I've done it, so maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite. I've totally done what Mark
we've all.
Scheifele just did.
Yep.
Growing up playing all the time. But I also knew I was a fucking bonehead when I did it, and that was a fucking bonehead move.
Yep. Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's one of those things where you know you're being an idiot in that moment, but you're just so frustrated that you fuck it. This is what's happening now, I guess.
Yeah, a couple other points on the top line. Turd Ferguson says top line is cheating for offense because the Jets have no other offense. Not even any danger that forces teams to play in their own end. 55's line is cheating now. Caitlin also says very similar with, I feel part of that is because they feel like they have to cheat. Definitely something to consider. Harjivan Parwana, good to see you in the chat, says, I cannot explain how bad this game was. The Calgary Flames, the McKenna chasing Flames, they stink. I promise, man. And also points out, like Chevy's abrasive said on X, you defend well via speed, not with size. Now, the NHL is changing. And, yeah, that's definitely something that the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to change as well.
Yep.
With how they approach defense. I believe it was Gilbert earlier said that there's no real conspiracy theory on the Jets defensively. They've had trouble addressing it for 7 years now.
Yep.
Or that was Al. It might have been Al. It was one of Al or Gilbert. I'm trying to go back and find it here.
Choices on Twitch says 55 making the Olympic team seems unlikely to me. Not so much about his play, but I just don't think he is well liked league wide. And we do know that politics and those type of things does come into play sometimes, but I still think he maybe ends up on the team, but just not in the lineup.
He was also the next man up at Four Nations, so
yep.
And there is extra roster spots this time, so I do think he's firmly in that mix. I just don't think this trip's really helped him. Rain went to where I wanted to take this next with overtime, though. Rain had said much earlier in the chat, I'd literally rather Parker Ford and Lowry than Taze and Nyquist in OT, and it's not even close for me. What did it tell you when you saw that the Jets' second 3-on-3 unit was Taves, Pionk, and Gustav Nyquist? What were you thinking when you saw that jump over the boards?
I thought I had fallen into Hot Tub Time Machine 3, and all of a sudden it was 2007. That was, and if it was, man, that would have been incredible. We could have had, World Junior Taves out there going to save the day. Yeah, I don't know what Arnie was doing. I do. He was sending a message. I'm assuming that's one of those things where it's a frustrated coach looking at his lineup of guys who haven't been performing well, and then made his own stupid decision out of frustration, same way that Mark Scheifele did, and sent out two of the veteran guys to show them to whatever. So that's my guess on what happened there and how we ended up with and besides, like we talked about, the Taves line was, producing at least well in terms of shot attempts. So I'm guessing that was supposed to be a message, quote unquote, maybe from a frustrated coach. What did you see?
I don't think that was a message. I think that was an honest choice.
Oh, that's
and
worse.
I think Gilbert,
that's even worse.
I think, and this is where I wanted to go. Gilbert Marion says, and Turd Ferguson nails it. They both are on this before I get there. Gilbert Marion says, after Connor and Scheifele, what are your options? Vlad and I follow. Turd Ferguson says that's a signal for his boss to find more talent. I do think Gustav Nyquist is a bit of an odd one. I'd rather a Perfetti or Velarde, even with the lack of speed, because it's not like a Gustav Nyquist is a burner.
Yep.
I have no problem. See, I don't want this to get lost for me anyways. I'm not out on the whole Taves thing, and I think I've talked about this often, that I think he's been more effective creating offensive looks than what he's been expected to do defensively. So I have no problem with him getting out there, though I was a little surprised with Gustav. But for me, it's a signal. Like, you look up and down that lineup, I think you can second guess anybody coming out of the boards after that group. I think it's a signal to what this talent is. It's not the decision I would have made. Like I said, I'd go Perfetti, Lowry, Perfetti, Nino, something like that maybe.
I would have gone Perfetti, Lowry.
But even that isn't necessarily something that you're looking at and being like, oh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, it doesn't instill a lot of confidence, but it's still a better option than Taves and Nyquist.
As Julian says, pretty glaring the lack of offensive talent when wondering who you have behind 55 and 81 in 3-on-3. And that's just kind of where I am right now. That's kind of where I am right now.
And it's funny that we don't even like mention Gabe Vilardi as a potential option whatsoever.
I mentioned him. I said I would have rathered him or Perfetti, probably.
Yep.
But yeah, and then Velarde did end up getting a shift out there.
Yep.
Caitlin says, here's your question. And it kind of ties in with Eric's. Eric says, how many breakaways can Lowry miss? He is the king of getting them and king of not scoring them. He could be a 25 goal scorer.
Yeah.
He could be a 25 goal scorer if he could finish on a breakaway.
Correct. It's a reason why he's a third line center, quote unquote, and not a first line center. He's got good instincts, but boy can't finish.
Eric says, Caitlin says, Taves second in the shootout makes less than 0 cents. So, what was your thought on the 3 shootout picks that went? Connor, Taves, Vilardi, and do you feel as strongly about Taves second as Caitlin does?
Yeah, the funny thing is with the shootout, that's maybe the one spot I don't mind Taves going out there. It's an isolated moment. He can just kind of go and play with the skill that's still there. Like the hands aren't like that's still there. We're worried about speed and pace and conditioning, but for a shootout, that one's okay. That I wouldn't mind 2007 Taves. That's that one wasn't too egregious to me.
No, I was fired up about it. That is like one of the areas I think you still want to juice him and use what he has to offer. This is one of the guys that was legitimately one of the best shootout performers throughout his career.
Legendary.
I would. That's the one area I wouldn't question at all. Actually, this was one of those guys that had that moment figured out.
Yeah, overtime, different story, but the shootout, I was okay with that one.
He still has the brain and the hands. That's as Gilbert Marion points out. If people forgotten his history, that's one of those spots. Go right ahead. Use him with Connor and Scheifele all year if you want. Vilardi, clearly a good option, and he talked about how much he really practices and likes being a part of the shootout in his interview after the game.
Yep.
But for me, using Taves in a shootout, all the sense in the world. I'm not questioning that one.
Yep, totally agree.
Eric points out it's also about defense in OT, though not necessarily something I agree with. I think it's 3-on-3 is about possession first and foremost. And at the end of the day, it's one shot could win it. I think you want to be pushing for offense, and at the end of the day, you're just playing for an extra point. I think the idea of like sucking overtime dry defensively is just not how I want to view 3-on-3
it's a waste.
Personally.
No, it's a waste. Yeah. It doesn't actually get you any farther in terms of coming away with the extra point from that. So, no, that's the spot to play the offense.
Yeah, no, that's where I fall with it. Choices TK asks, do Bedard and Celebrini push 55 off the Olympic team? What is your thought with where we're at with the Olympics right now?
Between now and when the final roster is named, it's not going to be that every single person that's on their short list is going to stay healthy, is going to stay at the pace that they're at. I think there is a world where Scheifele does make it onto the team with the larger roster, and Bedard and Celebrini also, maybe end up on that team as well. So I don't think them making it would be completely disqualifying for Scheifele.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the bubble has gotten quite tough with Hockey Canada. There's been a lot of talk from the insiders that they do wonder if they take only one of Celebrini Bedard as far as worried about getting too young. I would take both of them with their starts, and I just think it'd be valuable for the nation moving forward, having those two guys around, the likes of Crosby's last Olympics and such. You do wonder, though, if they're pushing Scheifele off with Scheifele's trip in mind, because I thought Scheifele had a great start, and he's still putting up the points. But I think the closer you watch these games on the road, the lack of defensive commitment is one of those things that Hockey Canada will be wondering about, because he'll be looked at as a depth player on the Olympic team. Does he get in potentially as a guy outside the top 12, but it could be the first offensive weapon into the lineup? Maybe.
Yep. But
I assume that's going to be a Bedard or a Celebrini, honestly. A guy like Bo Horvat's all of a sudden on the radar with his stretch of games of late. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. I think he's right in the mix.
Yeah.
I do think more recency bias wise, based on what I saw on the road here, I'd be worried for him, because I do think he's not answering the questions that Hockey Canada would have for him to trust him at the Olympics. But I do think he belongs in that mix. I really do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of ends up being the determining factors. Are they staying up to watch Mark Scheifele play at midnight on a Saturday in Calgary to see a bad game like this, or is it going to be checking out the box scores at the end of a road trip where he's got 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points in whatever the 5 games? It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to crack through. Because, he's got no wiggle room. There's no room for a slump. There's no room for him to fall off. He's got to keep putting up points consistently all the way through and look a little bit good doing it once in a while.
Melatonin Dream says Schaefer has a better chance than Scheifele. And Choices TK says, what about Schaefer? Would you take the young stud out of Long Island?
No, probably.
To the Olympics?
Probably not. I'd rather have Celebrini and Bedard there than Schaefer. If we're worried about are they going to take 2, sure, if you can have all 3, I'll take all 3. But if they're already worried about getting too young, which I think is a stupid mentality in general, but that's neither here nor there. I'd rather still the other 2 guys.
Some interesting Lowry talk over on YouTube that takes me into a convo, actually, because we did get a bit of a Lowry tidbit from Drager on Insider Trading this week that I don't think we touched on last show. Where was it here? Someone had asked about, should we trade? Oh, Melatonin Dream says, you think we should trade Lowry while he has some value? Trade Ferguson says Lowry is going nowhere. Gilbert Marion says Lowry is a great captain and one of the few guys that will fight hell no to trading him. So Darren Drager, in his recent update, said that the Jets and Lowry would like to come to a deal after the Shane Pinto deal was signed, and they were in the midst of this long road trip, and they would likely get to work on that this coming week when they get back home. What do you think that deal is going to look like? Would you trade him, as Melatonin Dreams asks? What's the expectation here with Adam Lowry and the upcoming contract in Winnipeg?
Yeah, no, starting with the trade, definitely not trading Lowry. He fits that role perfectly for what the Jets want out of a captain. They love him in that third line role. We actually think he could even play a little bit above that if needed. He's everything that the Jets as an organization want from that role and that person. So no, I don't see any world where they're trading him. And I wouldn't want to, because otherwise you're going to have to go out then and try to find those exact qualities somewhere else. So you're probably going to end up having to pay more for it because it's not going to be a homegrown type of thing. So, we harp on the Jets for not having enough of their high-end guys, maybe lately coming through. I don't want to be moving the one that we have that's not going to cost us $11 million kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a real part of me that sees why this question's even asked.
Yep.
With how old this team is and where this is all going. And I do think Al Camino is right when he says, bold prediction, it's going to be too much for too long. So there's a part of me that is all in on, hey, this is going to be a tough year and you can get a lot for a center like him right now. You'd get more than you're going to get out of him on the next deal. And then there's the human element and the reality sign that guy is the perfect captain for Winnipeg. Even if you wanted to retool and get younger, you'd want a guy like him around steering the ship. And as Turd Ferguson says, Lowry is a lifer, even post-playing career. He's permanent as can be. That guy is kind of resemblant of what I think a lot of this market and this team wants to be. So all that stuff does play in. But there is an asset management side of me that would love to see what you get back for a guy like that, for a team that's potentially hitting that cliff.
I mean, if you were blowing it up, that's a great piece you'd be able to really cash in on. But I just don't see the Jets going down that road. They're going to get him signed. He'll get 4x6, 4 point something by 6, and he'll be staying here for the end of his career.
Al Camino does point out they haven't drafted an NHL center in 15 years. Who cares?
Yeah, and every year we complain that there's no second line center, so that's correct. That's why we can't lose the one that we have.
B. Cal says Adam Lowry has been non-existent, and we should definitely trade Lowry. But an organization loves to keep players. He reminds me of Braden Shen for real, but stronger and bigger.
Yeah, he's a better Braden Shen, which is why we don't need to trade for Braden Shen. We already have that at home, and it's better.
True. Eric says $4 million for 8 and retires after 6. I do wonder if they take that approach, honestly. With a contract that long, expecting him not to finish it out to keep the AAV short.
Yep.
That is an interesting pathway Eric brings up.
Yeah, keeps the AAV short. There's no 35-plus penalty because he's young enough. It's a good call.
And on this conversation and where this is all going with the age of it and how important these guys are, like, and Adam Lowry is very important to keeping this thing together. And he's going to be in his mid-30s and likely going in the wrong direction. Julian points out, where was it here? I had just seen it. Frankly, this team is looking at some lean years once this old core ages out and loses their effectiveness. The fact there's only 2 draft picks since 2017 on the roster is pretty jarring.
Yes.
Yeah, this old core has become very valuable to this market in particular to keep things afloat. So we'll see what that deal gets done at. I assume it'll get done fairly quick next week with them looking at it.
Yep.
I don't see either party not getting it done in a quick fashion and tying Lowry the rest of his career as the leader in Winnipeg. So I'm expecting some kind of news this week when it comes to Adam Lowry and his future with the Jets.
Yeah, totally agree. And I give me the Adam Lowry run locker room over the, Blake Wheeler run locker room, for example. Like you said, even if they end up in a situation where they're going to have to blow it up and retool and get a little bit younger, I think Lowry's the guy that I want those young players interacting with and kind of learning from.
Here's a question from Jets fan 24. Was this last offseason one of the worst in 2.0 history? Are we ready to call it that after 18 games? Are we going that length already?
No, definitely. I'm not ready to put it that as the worst offseason in two, or even one of the worst yet. Inaction is a lot harder to judge for me. You know what I mean? They didn't do anything, so it makes it harder for me to say that what they didn't do was bad. But it's at the moment shaping up to be one of the most impactful, but not in a good way.
Let's see where this goes by the deadline. Like, there's still a long time here. We're at game 18. But there is a pathway, and especially with how this has looked early on, that we're going to have a real conversation about the last 18 months from Shovel Day Off after 3 really strong years. Let's see where this goes, because early on there's a lot of warning signs that the cliff might be closer than even we thought, and we've been talking about the cliff.
Yep, absolutely. And just for everybody listening right now, if you're calling in, when you get through, you may be placed on hold just for a few seconds while we finish up the current thought. So if you get through and you're put on hold, just stay on the line for a few seconds, and you'll be first up.
So I got a question here. It kind of stems off Choice's TK's question for you. Ben Howard, who tunes into the show and I chat Jets with during the day, asked a really interesting question that I do think we're going to have to contemplate as the year goes on here. So I think it's obvious based on what we've talked about, bigger picture a lot, that we see the team having 2 big needs, if not 3, a top 6 forward, a top 4 D, and likely another top 6 type of scoring forward.
Yep.
Big picture. If you can only get one, a truly impactful top 6 forward or a truly impactful top 4 D, which one would you prefer with this year's version of the Winnipeg Jets? I had a hard time thinking about this one.
Right-handed D, right-handed D, right-handed D, right-handed D, right-handed D, right-handed D. All day, twice on Sundays. Get me a top 2, top pairing, right-handed defenseman that can just go out and eat minutes. It's just they need it more than the other spots. They can continue to schlub around with 3/3 lines if they're all fairly decent, but they cannot continue to survive with Josh Morrissey being the only defenseman in that top 4 when Dylan Sandberg isn't around. So I think it's more pressing right now.
Caitlin says the PLD trade brought us about 3 years, and we're approaching the cliff and arguably speeding it up by getting so much older. Al Camino says not sure it matters. Gilbert Marion says I think offense, it's clear scoring is going to be an issue. I do think both matter so much
Yep.
in this conversation that it's really, really, really a tough point for me. And I had kind of said that when Bennett asked in the chat. I do think if you could promise me good health, I would lean towards the forward because I do think they need the goals. And at least I know if I'm healthy, I got Morrissey and Sandberg to kind of carry at least 2 pairs. I do think if not knowing about health, I think I'd lean towards like a Mackenzie Weegar and really just be built out tough from the back end and hope that you run into a heater from the Scheifele, Connor, Velarde line in the playoffs because goals are going to be real hard to come by.
Yep.
But maybe they'll be hard to come by both way, and you're trying to go on a heater through the best of your best where Morrissey, your team's pretty much built through Hellbuck, Morrissey, Sandberg, Weegar.
You can work with that. The other question is it a scoring winger or is it a center? If it's a center that is going to come in and finally shore up this number 2 center spot and can actually produce offense, I may start to be a little swayed towards that spot of it. But if it's going to be a scoring winger, I still think I firmly land on the top 4D.
Harjivan Parwana says, how good is the forward? If we mean a top line forward, then no, I can't do it, man. However, Mackenzie Weegar on this team makes him 44 and 54 the best top 4 in the league, to be honest.
Yeah.
In front of Connor Hellbuck, too. I think there's something there.
That's nasty work, yeah.
Turd Ferguson says you're not going to win in the playoffs to any real degree with a top 4. We have not the way DeMello's game is regressing. Jets fan 24 says I like. Would you rather Weegar or Kadri? For me, it's Weegar by a mile.
100% Weegar, no question.
The Kadri makes it interesting.
Yep.
In an ideal world, I'd love both.
Caitlin says the reality is we need both if we want to go anywhere. And if the Jets want to be a Stanley Cup contending team, which they told us that's the goal now after winning the President's Trophy last year, yeah, the truth is we need both. We need a center that can go out there and actually control some offense, and then we still need that top 4D.
Julian says it's times like this where I go, fuck it, play the kids because the vets aren't getting it done. What is there to lose? I definitely agree with that on the back end. Up front, I'm not necessarily there because I just don't think that the youth showed enough up front with the opportunities they had.
Agreed. They don't have enough of the high-end talent.
At this point, though.
Yeah, they don't have enough of the high-end talent up front to do that right now, where you could realistically expect them to make a difference potentially. But they do have Salo, who's playing those top minutes, who's already played pro in Sweden, who's had, this is kind of what they've been grooming him for. And you've got potentially a spot there where they don't like what they have at the NHL level right now. All those things in other organizations, you would say, hey, this is, the time to give this guy the look. It's just a little frustrating that we're not getting there.
Eric says Tippett or Weegar. Ooh, that's a tough one. I think Tippett is really a perfect fit up front.
Yep.
And I'd love to pull off both of those guys if you could. And I think you could cost-wise, actually, if the cost was similar to what it was in the Weegar one. But between those two, I think I would choose Weegar.
Oh, that one's tough. That's hard. I still think I land on it being Weegar, but depending on cost to acquire, you could sway me.
Me and Caitlin go opposite ways on this one. Says also a good point. Give me Weegar over Kyrou any day, but if a forward like Tippett is available, you have to take him. I think for me in that order, it goes Kyrou 1, Weegar 2, Tippett 3. If I'm being honest.
Ooh, I think I still have Weegar, but fuck Kyrou. That's hard. That one's hard.
Turd says on this discussion, you could pin your hopes on winning 2-1 playoff games with Helly and that top 4 with Weegar. Bringing in a forward, you're going to be back to trying to outscore our issues. Al Camino says, why play Salo when you can pay Luke Shen $2 million? I think that's what they should really be doing at this point, is seeing what Salo can do over the next month ahead of Luke Shen, but we know that that's not coming.
Yep.
Because we can't possibly, from the outside looking in, get a grasp on the hugs per 60 and the pep talks per 60 and the expected smiles that Luke Shen brings to an environment. So
Aw.
we just don't have the full story with the 1-in-18 goals for versus goals against run he's been on.
Look,
Just doesn't tell the whole story.
That Matt Hendricks Memorial Award that he's going to win at the end of the year is going to look real nice on his mantle. So I can't wait for it.
Caitlin does say Tippett's age is what sells me, and he really does fit that perfectly,
Yep.
as we've discussed in shows past. Harjivan Parwana says Nik is going to go choose Jonathan Huberdeau before all of these dudes. I
That's
don't
your
know if
guy.
I go there, but
That's your
watching
guy.
him again,
That's your man.
I take a shot. Watching him again tonight, I take a shot on him cheap. I would take on that contract cheap, given where the Jets are. It's going to be an ugly fall off.
The funny thing
But, hey,
is, the Flames are so shit. They're falling apart. This is an ancient roster, and we're like, hey, there's like 3 pieces on there that we could pry off. That would be real nice over here.
Choices TK points out on Salo, he was a stud in the playoffs with Skellefteå in the Swedish league playing tough minutes. He ended up being their highest leverage defender.
Yeah, it's you
At
got to
the
give him
time.
a chance at some opportunity, right? And everybody always goes, "Oh, you can't start him on the top pairing. You can't start him. You have to start him on the third." Well, there you go. You have a chance to start him on the third pairing. You've got an open spot right there. Play him in soft minutes. See how he does. But we know that they're not going to. That's not their MO. That's not how they progress their prospects through. So it's
Hey,
frustrating.
we're playing the long game for Braden Shen at the deadline for
Oh.
2 first-rounders. Get ready, folks.
Can't wait. Can't wait to see Lowry drop to the 4th line, Braden Shen get the 3rd line, and Taves stay at 2nd line center. I can't wait. It's going to be great.
Adam Douglas says, how about Tage Thompson or Alex Tuck? If you
Oh.
could get either of them, sign me up. Tage Thompson would be obviously a massively
Did you
huge
see that
add.
goal tonight, Tage Thompson?
Yeah.
Did you see that? How disrespectful that was. In the brush him off. Oh, my God. In a heartbeat. Whatever they
Get out.
want. Take it all. Take all my money.
Hey, get out of my way, little boy, to
Oh.
Alex DeBrincat.
That's what I said today when I was watching the game with Miranda. I'm like, that's what you do to your little brother. That's what you do to your sibling on the ice.
But I will say Tage Thompson, being American, I don't think he's waving that
No.
early in a long-term deal.
Not coming. back.
Alex Tuck would be a really interesting rental. He's someone I've been long interested in putting into this system that could play a bit of center, plays mostly wing. That's something I would be looking at for sure.
Yeah, if the option is there, that's a good one.
Caitlin on the Salo conversation, and Al Camino as well. Al Camino says AHL minutes are overrated. Caitlin says we have a horrible tendency to not play guys with top 4 or top 6 potential until they're ready to go directly into that role. And I do think that is something that's been very true with this org at times in the past. And yeah, I just think there's more to be gained even in 14 minutes in the NHL for Elias Salmonson than there is playing Luke Shen or Colin Miller at this point.
Yeah, 100%. The thing with AHL minutes being, quote unquote overrated, those are the only minutes that we have to gauge him on. We haven't had the chance to see what he looks like in the NHL minutes. That's the whole point. So, yeah, he's looked really good in those AHL ones, and that's all we really have to go off of. He's looked really good in the Swedish League playoffs, and that's all we have to go on. So, at a certain point, you have to see what the person looks like getting the NHL minutes. They have to work through those deficiencies when they pop up. They have to be able to see if they can handle the speed, if they can handle the physicality at that point. If you never attempt it, how do you know when it's going to work, right? And yeah, the Jets have been so heavy on just casting guys into a role, and that's it. That is your spot that you're in, and when it's time for you to move out of it, then someone else has to move into that exact spot. Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more flexibility, get him into that 3rd pairing, see what he looks like at NHL speed, and see if you have that ability at some point to move him up, right? But it's, probably not going to happen this year.
But as we get close to the 1:30 hour, the Winnipeg Jets beat the Calgary Flames in a shootout tonight. Let's go to the 3 stars and work our way out of this one on this late hour.
Let's hit it. Right on.
To answer a few things that popped up in the chat there, actually, Melatonin Dream says, if we traded for Robert Thomas, would we be giving up? I'm not sure we have enough to acquire a center of that level at that age.
Nope.
Plus, I don't see the St. Louis Blues ever trading him, so I can't even dive into that one. Harjivan Parwana says, I would sell so many of my organs for Philip Forsberg, and I would definitely join the pledge to doing so.
Yep.
But let's get into the 3 stars, Mikey. Who do you got on this night?
So at number 3, he gets his first goal of the season. Just shows up on the score sheet, and that line was pretty decent tonight overall. So Cole Perfetti gets the power play goal. He's going to get my 3rd star. Number 2 star, I've given him crap for most of the night and said he hasn't really been all that good in the rest of the games, but he was good tonight. And I'm going to give JT my 2nd star. Number 1 star, this was a tough one because, again, like I said, I know the Jets came away with a win tonight. They got the W. They got 2 points, but it still felt like a loss to me. It felt like it, so I'm not giving it to any of the Jets tonight. My number 1 star is everybody who's here hanging out with us until 1:30 in the morning after a road trip that's been pretty brutal to watch. The games, not only have they been losing, but kind of just not entertaining games. And yet all of you are still here with us to commiserate, to laugh, to try to come up with some better ideas. So everybody listening, 18 games in, you guys are my number 1 star.
Okay, so I'm going to go number 3 star. Kyle Connor, number 3 tonight. 2 primary assists. I thought he was trying to will that top line to better, and I thought this was a tough night for Mark Scheifele. We see him get a jump for an odd man rush that for some reason Josh Morrissey goes offside on a PK. I thought Kyle Connor had a couple great looks in this one that Dustin Wolf comes up with some big saves on him. So I'll go Kyle Connor, number 3. I'll go Connor Hellebuck, number 2, 31 saves on the night. A lot of them seem pretty awkward. Like there was some odd flutters up high.
The one that goes into his chest protector.
Yeah. He made that great breakaway save on that give and go to, I believe it was Coronado before he scores on the power play. I thought Hellebuck was dialed in on this one. And then, yeah, I thought the second line looked like a second line tonight. To their credit, they outshot attempted Calgary 23-7. Good for a 78 expected goals percentage, and I thought Jonathan Toews did a lot to create that with his work down low around the net, off the walls. I thought he had some good looks. Nemestikov sets him up backdoor. He sets up Perfetti on the wraparound look. I'll go Jonathan Toews on this night. He's not quite the Olympian he's been sold. He's not a 2C quite yet, but that was the type of game where you can get some hope that as this season progresses, maybe he becomes more. I think it's going to be like a 3C in reality. But Jonathan Toews, that's the type of game you want to see from him. I thought that was one of his best on the season, so I'll go him for the first start tonight.
Hell yeah.
And as Mikey said, thank you for being here at the late hour to discuss everything Winnipeg Jets. You guys are the stars of this show, if we're being honest. We won't be here for the next game as I got to move and get everything kind of set up. So we'll be back after Nick Ehlers' return game against Carolina later in the week. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And we'll see you after the Winnipeg Jets versus Carolina Hurricanes game at the end of the week. Take care, and we'll talk to you then.
Right on. Good night, everybody.